Hi, this is Karen from the Mojo radio show. Welcome. Today we have as our guest Irene Meyer. Irene, welcome to the radio show.
Thank you, Karen.
Irene, can you tell our listeners about your company? Because I personally found it very interesting because you take a little twist with it that some other folks don't.
Oh, yes, of course. I basically help middle income families find financial peace through really just planning out their life financially. And so I focus on the middle income market because I realize they're probably the most of need of what I do. But I also like to lay things out a lot simply for them so they understand that I'm on their side. So I help the middle income market achieve financial independence and peace.
Well, I agree that financial independence does equal peace. And tell us about one of your case studies.
Yeah, I would love to. I sat down with a client, and this is a couple years ago, my first year of business. And basically, she just approached me because she wanted help with some of her debt. They felt they were swimming in debt. They didn't know what to do. In fact, they were already thinking about selling their house that they just moved into. So, taking a look at their debt, I was able to show them a strategy that shaved off 8 years off of paying off their debt. So instead of being, 58 years old when they'd finally be mortgage free and debt free, she would actually be 50 years old, which is a lot when it comes down to that. It was about $500,000 in debt, by the way. On top of that, you can just imagine the interest that they would be paying on that debt over 18 years versus 10 years. It was probably about $70,000 in interest alone that I saved them. But I also take a different approach when people talk to me about debt. I also figure out, how much you actually need to retire. Because at the end of the day, we all have to stop working for money, don't we? Or at least we all want to. I showed her that, based on their retirement goals, that they would have to save about $2.1 million by the time they were 65. And their advisor did okay. They're going to have about $500,000 by the time they were 65. But by tweaking their investment portfolio a little bit, I was able to put another $800,000 back into the retirement account. And this at the end of the day, while I'm protecting their income, as well as their assets. The biggest thing for them, I think, was just knowing that peace was there and knowing that every year they'd sit down with me, their advisor, to talk about, where they were at in terms of, their goals and their plans. So this is one of the case studies I really, really love.
Well, and I love hearing about it. Thank you. It's so hopeful for many people. And what you didn't mention is that you worked 20 years for a bank. So how about taking a minute to talk about that? You're just not a 2-year-old business.
Yeah, no, I actually worked at the bank, one of the major banks here in Canada, for 20 years, almost to the day I left them. But I was actually a branch manager for most of the 20 years I was there, and I have a lot of experience dealing with clients. And what I saw every day was I saw clients living paycheck to paycheck and barely making ends meet and barely putting money away for their savings. So that's really what inspired me to kind of look at clients this way.
Yes, and you told me that as far as your passion, that describes actually some of your passion, but you also have a more personal story to tell.
Yeah, I absolutely do. The biggest reason why I'm so compelled to help as many people as I can, Karen, is because I myself came from a very modest family. My parents, who immigrated here to Canada in the early 70s, really started with humble beginnings, and truly they stayed humble. And what I mean by that is when I started to take a look at their finances when they were looking at retiring, I was just astonished at, that they still owed money on their house and they didn't have very much in savings. And I guess you can say I felt somewhat guilty because I was a branch manager at the bank at that time still, and couldn't help but wonder what it is that got them to that point, and realized that that's essentially, they were essentially, I want to use the word victims, but they were just essentially an end result of how the traditional financial industry works right now. So about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I want to say maybe, I left the bank to open up my own business. And I've been in business for myself for about 3 years, and working specifically with people just like my parents to help them gain financial independence. And so that's my personal story.
That's fantastic, your story. It gives so much meaning to why you're doing what you're doing. And I would think, as it did with me when I heard your story, I thought that's someone that I could speak to and be very honest with who would really help me. So thank you so much for being on today.
Oh, thank you, Karen.
And how can we get a hold of you?
You can reach me via text or call me at 780-916-9189.
Thank you so much, Irene. I really personally appreciate that you were on the show today.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome. And to our guests, we thank you for listening, and we look forward to bringing you another Mojo client on the Mojo Radio Show. Bye.